we want to tell you that Joe Biden has, in fact, announced this morning that he is running for president. He just released that on Twitter. The former vice president tweeted this: the core values of this country, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that has made America is at stake. That is why today I'm announcing my candidacy for president of the United States. Hashtag Joe 2020. Joining me right now is Democratic political analyst, Johns Hopkins University professor, Wendy Osefo. Great to see you, sir. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Your reaction? We were expecting Joe Biden to jump in, and he has.
He's in. And I think a lot of people have been waiting for this moment, especially on the Democratic side, and now we have the official word from him that he's in. I mean, he goes into this race leading not only Trump, but also his fellow Democrats in the race. A recent political poll has him leading Trump at 8 percentage points, 42 to 34. He's leading when it comes to millennials at 14%, when it comes to women at 22%. So this is big numbers here. I think we have to look out for Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. These are places where Bernie Sanders has a stronghold on New Hampshire. Kamala Harris has a stronghold on that African-American base in South Carolina. But overall, I think that what we see here is with the numbers alone, he has a very strong chance of winning. But I will say this is not going to be an easy run for him. He has to rectify issues when it comes to why did he vote to enter the Iraq war? Why did he vote against busing to integrate, racial equality? There are issues that Joe Biden has to face, so this is going to be an uphill battle. But the numbers show, if we just look at the sheer demographics of this, he is the leading candidate, not just for Democrats, but for 2020 as a whole.
You know, it's interesting because some people in the party would say Bernie Sanders is the leading candidate. He's been an incredible fundraiser. Even President Obama and Michelle Obama said yesterday that they are not going to vote for anybody. They're not getting behind anybody in the primary season. They say they're going to wait for the voters to decide, and then they'll probably get behind, obviously, whoever the candidate is. Did you find that interesting that the president, Obama, is not coming out strong behind Biden?
I think that what's going on right now with the Democrats is the overall arching goal is they want someone to beat Trump. So whoever that person is, whoever it is, they do not want to muddy the waters. They want the people to decide and vote with their feet and vote with their thoughts. And with that being said, what they're saying here is we're not going to back anyone because we want to make sure that when it comes to 2020, we do not have any inclination of us possibly losing. We want to make sure we win this. So even though, Obama calls Joe Biden his brother, he does not want to get into this too early. And I think that that's actually a good approach because myself and as well as other Democrats and strategists, what we're saying here is whoever wins our party's nomination is who we're going to vote for because that's how strongly we feel.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, does Biden need the push from Obama now? To get, the lead, because this is a tight race. You know that there's a radical arm of the party that wants Elizabeth Warren, that wants Bernie Sanders to have big federal programs like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, AOC. So don't you think Joe Biden needs Obama now and not to necessarily wait until the party decides?
I don't necessarily think so. I think that having Obama now could possibly muddy the waters because when Obama left his presidency, there were some Democrats who were not necessarily happy about things that he left on the table and did not complete. So even though Obama is our party favorite, I think right now we're just trying to see what each candidate can do on their own. Even though Elizabeth Warren is not necessarily leading, she is definitely leading when it comes to policy. She's one of the only few out of the 20 Democrats who have hardcore policies that says this is what she's going to do. So, even though Obama will be great as far as fanfare, right now we just want to see what each candidate is bringing to the table as far as policy.
Yeah, all right. Let me ask you about the fallout from the Mueller report and whether or not this has any impact, because Hillary Clinton is out with a new op-ed in the Washington Post this morning titled, "Mueller documented a serious crime against all Americans. Here's how to respond" in it. She calls for Democrats to hold off on impeachment efforts, saying that the debate about how to respond to Russia's sweeping and systematic attack and how to hold President Trump accountable for obstructing the investigation and possibly breaking the law has been reduced to a false choice: immediate impeachment or nothing. History suggests there's a better way to think about the choices ahead. What's your reaction to this, especially since we know that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier, was tangled up with Russians to actually try to get dirt on Donald Trump? There's a whole investigation now going on in terms of how that investigation into Donald Trump started, because it was no predicate. We know that the FBI handled her with kid gloves, that she really wasn't investigated over her email scandal. There's a story today that her emails actually were found in the Obama White House now. The fact that she's writing op-eds and out there on stage talking about this, what's your reaction, Wendy?
I believe she's a private citizen, so she has the right to do so. Even though she was former First Lady, even though she was, Secretary of State, she still has the right to be a private citizen. And when it comes to the Mueller report, it's something that definitely impacts all of us. I think that she does bring up a good point, whether you sit on the left side or the right side of the aisle, which is, we are faced with two choices, and those two choices are not really good ones, which is, impeachment right now or just do nothing. I think there has to be a middle of the road here, because what we see from that report is something did happen. And at what point do we hold the President of the United States accountable for what the report says? And that's what she's bringing up here.
Well, we know something happened. We know that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier, that they got the dossier to find out this dirt on Donald Trump, which actually was unverified and salacious. That's what happened.
Well, and then I can also say what happened is that the Russians went ahead and tried to interfere with our democratic process in favor of Donald J. Trump. And that is an issue. And that is something that not only affects Hillary Clinton as well as Donald Trump, that's something that affects 2020. What are we doing to make sure that whomever goes forth for 2020, we do not allow a power like Russia, a nefarious power, to interfere in our democratic process?
Yeah, it's interesting because we knew that Russia was trying to meddle into the West's dealings back in 2012 and 2014. Why do you think President Obama and Hillary Clinton never did anything about it?
I think he did try to do something about it. I definitely do. I do believe that it's not something that was finished. That's why I was saying about, there's certain people on the left side that have issues with what happened with Obama and the things that he left on the table.
Right.
But I do believe that now that Trump is in office and he is the President of the United States, the question then becomes, what is he currently doing about it? And right now, there's nothing he's doing about it. And that is an issue.
All right, Wendy, thanks very much. We're going to keep following this. Of course, Joe Biden is on Twitter. He is officially in the race, running for president.